Welcome to the Slade Ham experiment. My face, the one you see, that's your pilot speaking. Slade Ham. Yeah, this is the Midnight Spaceship. We're on board. The color's different tonight. If you're just listening, I always encourage you to go over the YouTube channel and see the studio for yourself. Tonight, I don't know what that color is. It's not a red, it's not a magenta, it's not a pink, but it's comforting tonight. The Midnight Spaceship is adrift. I'm going to cover some things. Tonight we're going to do some clips from a recent comedy show. I want to talk about a couple of sci-fi and fantasy movies that have recently surfaced in my brain for some reason. And then a couple other things. I'm having you have to give me a minute to get my bones in place and relax a little bit. I'm having one of those days. Whew. I know. I feel like I start a lot of these episodes that way. Maybe I have a lot of days. I don't know. I like to think I don't. Today, though, today's one of those days. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to run have we talked about how much I love a hot bath? Like, uncomfortably love. How it's my favorite thing in the world. I'm going to run the hottest, deepest bath tonight. I'm going to soak until all of this is off of me. Nothing even to really complain about. Just the typical stuff. Comedy's an interesting, before I get into it, comedy's an interesting animal. Why does everybody think they can do it? Why does everybody think they have input on the career of a stand-up comic, or what a comic should do, or what they would do if they were a comic, or how they would do comedy? Or this isn't like a one-off. Everybody. I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard in my life, and not just from random fans and people at shows, people I deeply respect, people I love, who will casually, yeah, I could have done comedy. Can you? Really? Could you? It's like, they don't think it through. How that many people think they can do stand-up comedy, yet fear of public speaking is still the number one fear in the whole wide world? They're just saying it. And I don't resent your input, but shut the fuck up. So, cheers to them and y'all and everyone else that's here. It's going to be a good year. The special's right around the corner. I'm going to play some clips from, I just did the show at the Houston Improv. And as you know, this show is nothing if not a testing ground for my stand-up comedy material. I'm sure it's beneficial to a lot of you artists. A lot of people listen to it because it's motivational, helps you follow someone's journey, and then encourages you onto your own. Sometimes you learn stuff. Sometimes there's cool little factoids or nuggets of things you didn't know about. Sometimes I introduce you to a book or a movie you've never heard of, and it sparks something within you. There's a lot of reasons to listen to this show. But in terms of why I make it, I've been very, very forthright about the fact that I only care about this so that I can organize the thoughts in my head. And all the way leading up to my comedy special, if you want to go back, this is an interesting journey. You can go back all the way to the beginning of my podcast and listen to the ideas for what became Signal Noise, my new upcoming comedy special. You can see those ideas sort of germinate. You can see me trying them on the show, talking them through, working them out, seeing if they're funny. Not all of them were funny. Not all of them made it. But some stuff, the structure of it, the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, some things about spiders. I can remember a few bits, a story about my niece, all of those sort of test-driven on the podcast. So that's what this remains for me. Stage time, if you will. So over the past few months, somewhere in there, I've thought a lot of different ideas out. I've worked them out on the show. You can go back, I don't know the episodes, and you can find a couple of them. These are a few that made it to the stage. This first one, I structured this whole new show. I don't know for sure what it's going to be, but the center pole, the load-bearing wall right now, it hinges on survival of all sorts. And in this case, I talk about an old friend who died. He was a survivalist. He sort of is the center structure for the first part of the show. But this is a part of that. This is a little chunk out of that chunk. And so much of this was fun. And I think you'll see where some of these ideas came from if you're a longtime listener of the show. Here's a clip. I'll be back. We'll do another clip. And we'll do some more stuff.
John had all these bullets. I was like, why you got all these bullets? He's like, I don't want to have to shoot somebody, but I wish a motherfucker would. I hear that in Texas a lot. I love people. I wish a motherfucker would. No, you don't. You do not wish one would. Because it's all romanticized in your head. Someone's going to break in, pop, pop, and then what? You thought about the rest of your night after that? How does that work? I mean, I'm sure the police show up and ask you a few questions and take the body away, but there's no cop with a mop. You hear this? Blood everywhere. You got stuffing sticking out of your couch. Nobody pokes that back in for you. You got four. All your pictures got bullet holes in them. Nobody puts that back together. Even if there is a business that does that, even if there is, they don't come like a pizza. You know, it's going to take more than 30 minutes.
I love shows like these because this is, outside of the podcast, this is the first time I've ever done any of these jokes. You guys, I can't hear you. There's no response. If I say something funny here, I just got to wait till you message me, you know? So I'm determined there's certainly going to be some stuff. I don't know why I always want to talk about wildlife documentaries in my stand-up comedy. But this also, I think I talked about the cameramen filming the falling walruses on a previous episode of the show. This from the stand-up show on Wednesday.
I watch wildlife documentaries all the time, and those dudes just film the most horrific shit, and they don't ever break away. They always got it right in frame. It's so wonderful. Have you seen the walruses? I'm sorry, the walruses? The fallen walruses? Walruses. They're like, y'all know what walruses are. Saber-toothed seals, the big ass. They're the size of Volkswagens, and they got these big. There's an island. Does anybody know what I'm talking about before I describe? Okay, yeah. There's this island, and they go to it to film these walruses that show up there to mate, and there's hundreds of thousands of these walruses, and there's so many, in fact, that there's not room for all the walruses. So some of these 2,000-pound animals start climbing the cliff. They don't have hands. They also don't have feet. And they weigh 2,000 pounds. I was just in South America. I climbed a mountain with legs and feet. And I don't weigh anything like that. And this shit was hard. So these walrus, they blubbed their way all the way to the top of this mountain. And because there's no more room, they jump. Walruses. No legs, no arms. And not just up, off. 2,000-pound animals just flying off the top of this mountain like they were thrown from a trebuchet. And they split like big water balloons full of meat. And the camera people never break stride. They film them all the way down. You don't see them shaking because they're crying. Or nobody helps these poor walruses. Nobody puts a bucket of fish in a wrong way sign.
So thank you to everyone who came out to that show. We had a very good time. We had a good house. Paul Odo was on the show. Trey Tutson was on the show. Chicken Joe Clark, a lot of my Whiskey Brothers brethren joined us. It was a brand new show. It was an hour and 14 minutes of stuff that, for the most part, some of the stuff in the third, I got the hiccups again. In the third act, I think, might be culled from some prior comedy, but just some in premise only. It was really an hour of stuff I've never really done. A lot of crowd work, but fun, constructive, and not all made for the internet. So there is still, I like to remain like Las Vegas. You're not just showing up to be filmed and pushed back out into the wild. I didn't know they were filming me for TikTok. I like to think that if you come to my show, what happens in the show stays in the show, unless it's really egregious, and then, I mean, all bets are off. I will see how much of this ends up, whatever the finished product will be, in a year and a half or so. I'm going to tape again, and this show will have become something entirely different over a year's worth of touring. None of this may even be in it, but for now, it's fun to see. It's fun to see what we got and see where it goes. I want to do a list here of 3 things that you should know about. I stumbled on James Gunn's Ad Astra site. James Gunn, director of Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy. Did he do this? He did the Suicide Squad movie, whatever DC stuff he did. But Guardians, James Gunn. He has a lit mag. It's short stories and poetry and some stuff. They take submissions. I was looking at the guidelines for the submissions, and I'll read the guideline here as he defines what they're looking for. But it made me think of the genres, because sci-fi fantasy is what I grew up on. That's my jam. As I assume that we all share that somewhat. Some of you may hate that stuff, but for me, coming from the world of just comic books and regular books and film, and it's what I always gravitate towards. It's magic, but science and possibility and all that good fun stuff. Monsters and creatures and things and spaceships and all of that is what I gravitate towards. Ergo, it's what I write if I write fiction. So James Gunn's Ad Astra publishes mostly science fiction with some fantasy. Here's how the genres are defined. Both the genres are literatures of discontinuity, where there is a rupture between the depicted world and the one in which we live. Science fiction is further distinguished by one essential quality. We can trace a path from here to there. That's pretty important. James Gunn notes that science fiction incorporates a belief that the most important aspect of existence is a search for humanity's origins, its purpose, and its ultimate fate. Science fiction explores the human condition through the consequences of future changes in the world. That's what makes it different from fantasy. Fantasy, the minute you add magic and stuff that can't really happen, you're in the fantasy land. So, I was going to do my top 3 sci-fi projects that you should but may not have seen. And then I realized that one of the things I wanted to list was not sci-fi. It was, in fact, fantasy. And then I decided I could just change the rules because it's my list. So here's 2 science fiction and 1 fantasy movie you should watch if you haven't done it yet. And I'll explain. First of all, do you know there's a movie called Primer? Sci-fi in the purest of senses. And I watched this movie. It came out in the 2000s, so in the aughts. Matthew Broussard, I think, referenced this movie to me. Another great comedian. And it's impressive on its own. Just watch it. It swept Sundance that year, I think. Shane Carruth, I was going to say was the director, but he also wrote it. And not only did he write it, he produced it, he edited it, he scored it. if you knew how much work that was on a film to just write, then direct, all of those full-time jobs on your own. Editing is a full-time job on its own. I don't know if you've ever edited anything. And then I barely have the musical ability to pick songs I like and play them where I think they go, much less to write something from whole cloth. Are you kidding me? Shane Carruth. Now, I don't know anything about this guy. He could be a creep. He could be an angel. Don't message me back. I found out I don't care. Primer, extraordinary. Made for about $5,000. Yeah. All of this sounds like something that would be made in your kitchen. And it basically was, except it doesn't feel or look or act or anything like that. It's the most technically accurate sci-fi you're going to stumble across. The jargon's right. I think the guy's an engineer who Shane Carruth, I think that's his background. It's unapologetically good. And it's based on the premise that someone accidentally invents time travel. And I don't say that in a comedic hot tub time machine kind of way. I mean in a real, this is all good things that are invented are generally accidents. This is the temporal penicillin, I guess. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. I don't know what it's on, so just look it up. Primer, Primer. Second on my list of sci-fi you must watch, and many, many years ago, I didn't have to tell so many people they needed to watch it. Also, many, many years ago, we laughed about the fact that it was inching closer and closer to documentary than film. Mike Judge's Idiocracy. Some of you have seen it. Some of you have not. Some of you might have heard about it. Some of you also might not have. I am biased. My good friend Brad Jordan, Scarface, is in the movie. He plays the pimp. What is the pimp's name? Outside? Oh, tie-dyed? I can't remember. Anyway, he plays the pimp. Maya Rudolph's in it. Luke Wilson is in it. I think Luke's still got the messed up nose, but he's not the Wilson with the really messed up nose. Not Owen, who looks like the Statue of Liberty, but you know. Terry Crews is so good in this movie as President Camacho. It's unbelievable. He's Terry Crews at his best. Mike Judge, of course, responsible for Beavis and Butthead, a great comedic mind, King of the Hill. Idiocracy is a look at our future that has been expedited. When it was made in the early 2000s, it only speculated on the possibility of a completely corporate sponsored future and our own stupidity and the fact that we might turn into ridiculous little balls of sponsored goo just being fed food and pushing the hamster wheel around every single day. But man, he was more prescient than you would have thought. It is worth a total watch, and it is uncomfortably reflective of our society today, so much so that I would hardly call it science fiction and more just a work of contemporary documentarianism. Idiocracy. Look it up. And then, finally, I don't know how many people know about this movie. Time Bandits. Do you know? Sounds dumb. Time Bandits. 1980, what year is this? 85, 87, maybe. And maybe you got to fall in the right demographic for this. Some people, I don't watch English movies. Okay, all right, fair. And by English, I mean not movies in English, movies made by the English, which is remarkably a better bunch of output than their food. The English do make good films, and Terry Gilliam, I happen to be a big fan of. You also, if you're a fan of anything from that English era, Monty Python, you'll recognize some faces like John Cleese, Michael Palin, who co-wrote the movie. Also, Sean Connery's in it. Katherine Hellman, remember her? She was in Who's the Boss? Shelley Duvall's in it. The cast is pretty impressive. It's a fantasy film about a kid, but historical fantasy. This kid wakes up in his room one night, and these Knights of the Round Table have come through the wardrobe, and all these dwarves. There's like 5 of them. I don't remember how many of them. They're on a quest, but they're not dwarves with like the axes. They're like future dwarves. And I know I'm doing a terrible job of selling this. But then they show up in the bedroom, and the kid goes on an adventure, and it's one of those. It's so satisfying the way those films work, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where you're just going on a journey. We're going to make the 5 stops, pick up the 5 characters, come back, and all of the powers combined will reach a wonderful conclusion. It's sort of like that. They got to go through history. I think the Rice Robin Hood. I mix up so many of this stuff. The Knights of the Round Table, Robin Hood. They visit all these different scenes, all these vignettes. It's magically shot. It's Terry Gilliam, who there's an unofficial trilogy between this, Brazil, and the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, whatever that name of that movie is. It's sort of an unofficial trilogy. It's in the same vein. If you enjoyed those movies, you enjoyed this one. I like the ending of it, a little bleaker than you would expect. Maybe not from the English, but still a good film. A fantastic, fun bit of whimsy. And the sets are cool too. It's imaginative, and that's all I will leave you with. Those 3 films, worth your time. Start with Primer. It's the less fun of the fare. It's the darker. Then you can watch Idiocracy. Then you can watch Time Bandits, and then you can go to bed. That should be a good 8 hours of your life. And if I can't help you kill 8 hours, what kind of friend am I? Thanks for watching the Slade Ham Experiment. Thanks for letting me kill a little bit of time. Probably some more clips on an upcoming show. I'm starting to release a lot of things. There will be some clips from Signal Noise very, very soon. Probably on the next episode. I know I keep promising. I know I keep putting it off, but we keep making the film better. So you're just going to have to sit tight because there's nothing I can do. Cheers. Have a good January. If you're in Texas and you're seeing this, it still might be a bit nippy outside. I wish you safe and non-slippery travels this January.